but get some feedback as we kind of go through those locations and show you why we came to those decisions and how we tried to step back the massing along the perimeter. And then also just, we've been going through the hospital 3-4 times a week for 2 years and seen the condition and some of the challenges we're facing and the way the site lays out, why we put buildings where we did initially. And so really the intent is just to kind of say a few things based on the feedback we got last week, walk the site a little bit. I know you mentioned some good questions at the meeting about drainage and we might be able to dive deeper into that at the next meeting with a civil engineer. Unfortunately, his father just passed away, so he couldn't make it. But I think really as we walk along, if you have any questions, really just familiarize everyone with the site, and go from there. So, are there any specific things anyone wants to see, or any reason you came out? Just trying to be.
If we start in the front, my complaint is the height of the buildings on Whitwell, and all the traffic exiting on Whitwell, because I live over on Grant Street. So we could start over there,
Sure.
and then work our way back.
All right, we can do that.
Good. How are you doing? Good. Wow. So what is Oh yeah.
Okay, they called a meeting at 114 Whitwell. We weren't sure where to go and walk around. We go around back. Now we're walking in front. Erin, you're tweeting like caused a storm. When I went to the license board meeting the other day, everyone was like, what happened at the meeting? They were all going like, and I'm like, I'm not really sure. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like the chief and Nicole, and they were like, you were live tweeting.
Yeah.
And so they were all
I always
like,
do
oh
from all
my
the meetings.
God, what happened?
I didn't tweet anything that scandalous.
Ann's having it.
It was
They were all
meeting.
beating up on Ann though, weren't they? Kinda.
It was a heated meeting. Yeah.
Oh,
Definitely heated.
Ian's funny, isn't he?
Yeah.
They're all. We didn't have Paul Mucci there. He's the one that usually
would've
calms
had
everything down and stuff.
Sometimes.
But he probably knew what was going to happen, and that's why he didn't come.
Yeah. So we'll see him tomorrow and see if National Grid's Marcy Reed shows up.
It was just on the radio.
Oh, really?
That at the Boston meeting last night, that they didn't show up.
Okay.
And the counselor said, well, we have subpoena power. And the first thing I was like, well, Counselor Palmucci's already
did that,
he's
baby.
already
Yeah.
subpoenaed them.
All these residents across the street, and I live 3 doors down on French. So right here, this is where the 6-story building will be, this monstrosity here. And apparently there'll be entrances for the residents coming in on this side too. So we're gonna lose the sky, is the gist. And with Avalon built back there, from our house, we can see the whole, it's a tall building that way. So it's kind of like a little valley of high-rises.
Fair question. So when we looked at it, there wasn't a building here that Stewart had torn down, the old nurse's building.
Right.
That is bigger than the building that we're proposing, and so we're trying to respect the.
The nursing building was bigger?
Yes.
How many square feet?
What's the square footage?
I don't have the square footage. The setbacks were closer to 10 to 15 feet on the east side. The south side.
So this is wider.
And the setbacks were about 10 to 15 feet on the east and south side based upon
The size of the building that you're planning is smaller than the building that was here?
The footprint is
The
smaller.
footprint is small.
Yeah.
But not the height.
Oh, not the height.
There was a 4-story building.
Yeah.
And this is gonna be a 6-story.
And also,
So it's a larger building.
I think this street is
What's
gonna,
that?
this is gonna change. This street,
This street is sliding.
right, so it is gonna be bigger. That street is moving, so the building is literally, I don't know, whatever your dimensions are, it's huge.
Where does it connect to the house closest to that house at the intersection?
Is that the yellow house?
So this is one of the few areas on site where it's a 25-foot setback to the property line. It's not 25 feet from the house, it's 25 feet from the property line for only a small portion before the property sets back behind that garage. And the intent to break down the scale of this building, you're right, there are unit entrances. I think there's 6 or 7 units that front Whitwell Street. Those front doors are 25 feet from the property line, which I believe is set back from this sidewalk. So from the face of the sidewalk, it's 30 feet plus.
So are those trees gonna be gone?
So the intent is to save all the trees. Those units are will read as a kind of 2-story piece, and those were shown in brick. And then the rest of the height is set back from that face another 10 feet, and then the 6th floor is set back another 6 feet. So there's a kind of layering of heights as you get deeper into the site, so that you don't have a 6-story face right on the 25-foot setback from. And then the other piece is that in the middle of the site there's kind of steps back to kind of a U. That it's that middle portion that's the full 15-foot back, so that you only read the two kind of ends as being the 5 to 7 feet back from the brick face of the lower. So those are 6-story, but we step back on corners, both this is the eastern edge and the southern edge, 5 to 10 feet.
And there was talk of retail being on this corner here.
Yes, there's looking at 5,000 square feet or so of retail, and there's, I don't know if we talked about possibly medical office there. It's not destination retail, it's not the intent, but it's more retail there. So it's not trying to drive large parking lot full of people coming from all over Quincy. It was really for the community on the site and the larger neighborhood.
Do you promise no drive-through?
Yeah, we're not gonna have a drive-through.
Promise?
Yes.
I thought
Okay,
retail was
I'm gonna
specifically
trust you.
excluded
Yes,
in
you
the
can put
PUD. Retail of any sort.
If the neighborhood doesn't want retail, and you brought that up, we don't need to put publicly accessible retail there. There was a we heard was popular and people liked, but we're more than happy to keep it out of the plan and have everything private to the development. But we thought it was something that would be beneficial to the neighborhood, so we're happy to keep it out.
And what's the facade? Is that
So yeah, we were looking at a 2-story kind of brick base all around, and then there's a variety of materials talked about for the upper portion, but right now looking at fiber cement panel of some type.
No, we're gonna lose the sky, is what I'm telling you. These residents are obviously at work, but they're gonna look across. They're losing the sky. You know, they're gonna lose the sun. That's my complaint.
I was curious, so when this was a hospital, that's a very kind of a noble community serving institution, serving the entire city, not just our community. Now it's going to be residences, so, but we still kept with the commercial, so you're using all the previous heights, previous distances as the statute by which you're building the plan. But it's moving from a commercial property to residences. So is that throughout the whole plan? You basically said, hey, if the hospital did it before, we can do it too.
No, I mean we're not using the same setbacks. As you said, the nurses building is a little bit closer to the edge. We're not using the same setbacks.
But you're higher.
The height. We can use the cross section here if we want. The height. The administration building, the top of the cupola will be the tallest building on the site here.
But you can't see it. It's all shadowed in by all the buildings.
I mean, we have a shadow study. I can show you that. It's not shadowed in.
Well, I mean, you
with
couldn't
that.
see it from here,
Okay.
right? It's all,
So no, I mean, I think we're looking at this with a residential use. So that's residential heights, residential setbacks.
Chris, you reported that it's not intended to be residential, so I think the neighborhood is a little tipped, you know? We were looking forward to helping you find like a medical use, and we will, you know, come up with ideas of Spalding rehab. So the fact that it's residential is really the trust level is low. You know, you were
understand that.
quoted in the paper saying it's not in your DNA for Foxborough to be residential.
No, I understand that, and if we thought we could responsibly do medical here over a horizon that wouldn't keep this hospital in its current condition for 10 years, we would do that. We're looking to do medical downtown. We got into this, we did a test fit for the existing hospital. We had a bunch of different medical users through here. We did a brand new medical development, and it would be a humongous development here for modern medical. Parking garages, big new buildings.
Well, it's the same thing you're doing for residential. If you started to go back to the drawing board and tried to get someone with all the development you're doing now for residential, you could probably find someone who would do it
The
for...
scale of this development for residential is so much lower than what a commercial development, for example, parks, the demand is between 4 per thousand and 5 per thousand. So every 1,000 square feet of building, we have 4 parking spaces and 5 parking spaces. We're talking about 2,000 parking spaces up here for any meaningful medical development. We're talking about a parking structure that would eclipse any building that we're proposing to build here. And so when we got into this, and I know, you know, there's a lot more conversations with the neighborhood, and this is focused around this plan and trying to scale back this plan, which we're having now. First, there did not appear to be from residents, and maybe we misread the situation, a desire for something that large.
It wasn't our desire to have something this large either.
Well, I mean, we're trying to balance between making it an economically feasible development for us.
Sure.
And also to appease the neighborhood. And that's a balance that we're trying to strike right now. So we're having this meeting. When we came into this with looking to do medical downtown.
It was a stipulation of the agreement that you purchased the
Well, it was
property.
just, we had been having conversations with medical groups around the South Shore and in Boston that Quincy's underserved. We want to be in Quincy, in downtown because of the infrastructure. Now the problem was, when we started to have those conversations at a second level was, well, if we got into new construction and built the building that we were in, what's going on at the hospital? Stewards still there, they have the license. What if somebody came in there and used the portion of it? We don't think it's a real threat if you went through there. There was no path to getting the type of medical we wanted downtown with a vacant hospital sitting less than 4 miles. So the first 5 months of what we did was we did a plan for modern medical up here that didn't include these buildings, and we really couldn't utilize them for any,
Right.
you know, any institution that we're talking about in Boston. That was out of scale with the neighborhood. It's just parking and the size of the buildings. And we've looked at ways to reuse all of the hospital for anything, and we can have a separate meeting in the office, probably better to show you the files. There's nothing that we could do to the hospital that would bring the kind of medical care that we could get quasi-medical users in here, different kind of groups that reached out, but nothing that's going to bring what the hospital used to do. They just totally changed. Once that happened, we looked at it and said, all right, we have not done residential. We're not looking at doing residential anywhere else. It's just for the certainty of the site. What's it going to be in the future? Because I think looking at this for another 5 years is probably the worst of all scenarios from our perspective, because it needs some clarity and certainty. The highest and best use for what everybody appeared to want is residential. And so we're trying to find our way to a development that, you know, we can meet in the middle, and it is the future of the site.
the for the, when you said that you've done a plan as though this were a new complex, and you described, would I be characterizing that right to say it's about 3 times the size it is now? Because you said it would be more than 2,000 parking spots, or it would be bigger than this.
When you factor in garages, factor in that space, you know, structured parking garage, the buildings, if that's the kind of size you're talking about. And we looked at the history and said, hey, you know, the Hospital Health Neighbor Association formed in opposition to a 3-story garage. So
Well,
the type
it was not so much a 3-story garage, it was a garage that was built directly into the face
yeah,
of the park. That then and the traffic was going to come up
That was
Glendale
also-
and come in and out. It wasn't so much that was a 3-story. I mean, if that had been a 3-story built into the park, that would have been not that big a deal in terms of obstructive. It was the whole thing.
Yeah.
It was the use, it was everything else. Now, there was a plan at some point to have a parking garage for the hospital here. In fact, there's a group in Quincy that had a plan. We looked at, I think they even had a model. That was not the kind of parking structure that you're talking about. They were talking about doing a combination of on-site, out-of-garage parking because people in Quincy weren't going to pay for it in garage and also in garage parking. Now, when we were meeting, various people with the developer, we had really talked about that over 55 concept. And when you talk about residential, that was the residential we were talking about. It was that over 55, then it was an assisted living kind of building complex, and then it was a nursing home. And I think we heard that the Manor nursing home, was in Foxborough. So when you say that we were interested in residential, it was a specific type of residential, and it was a type of residential that wasn't going to have the impact on the neighborhood that this is going to have on the neighborhood. Just so. And then we had this conversation sometimes just with Chet, so we don't know. Although I think you were present for a lot of it.
So when we looked at the garage specific to a medical, I think probably why they cited the garage there was all the feedback we were getting from civil and architecture, that just because of the grade and the way you need to use the site, that's where a garage would have to go. And then at that point we had to use Glendale just for access. So that was why that maybe was cited where it was, and that was the feedback we were getting. And in terms of the use, that's a great point you brought up. I mean, we put in there use for senior living, so independent living, which you accurately went through the statute and looked at what was allowed. And all the calculations we did for both parking, traffic, was the highest intensity use of what we're looking to do. So it was, hey, if this were all residential, what would that look like from a traffic standpoint? What would that look like for parking? And as demand allowed, and we wanted to do a senior independent living building on here, it would be less intense than the residential use. But from our market research now, I'm happy to share it with you, there is not a demand for at the price point for assisted living or senior living. It's a little bit saturated in the area. Independent living is something that we're serious about looking at and making it an over 55 community. And that's one of the.
I'm sorry, I missed that. Did you say?
No, there's no.
Is it going to be over 55?
No, not the entire.
Because
there's
I know Jocelyn ascertained the information regarding, because you didn't have the 3 bedrooms on the original plans, but Jocelyn, I believe you found them at City Hall. And so then she calculated how many residents, and there was approximately how many?
2,000.
2,000. And of those 2,000, not being the 55 plus, how many do you think will be children?
So we talked to the superintendent of schools, we did an analysis, which we're going to post this week. I don't have a final answer for you right now, but to go back to that 2,000 number is incorrect.
Yeah, it's off by a significant
That's an
amount.
MEP calculation, so we took a number that said, how do we size the HVAC equipment?
So what would you be our guess for how many residents would be
Yeah, I
here?
mean, what other information was there in the narrative? There was absolutely nothing.
Well, there wasn't, so that was part of the
Right.
dialogue they were supposed to have, but you extrapolated an HVAC number to put 2,000
And I didn't
residents up
actually
here.
use the numbers. I said,
So what would your number be?
calculated 2 people for a 1 bedroom. and I
My
didn't
number
use
be
that.
for how many
Of
residents?
I used less than
Between 800 and 1,100 people.
So, okay, let's say just
Less than,
say
how many
1,000
people?
for the
less than 2
say
per unit?
and say 25% of those were children. That's 250 kids going to schools around here.
That's not an
And
accurate
Bernazani
number.
Bernazani has, I believe, 190 kids in the class. So basically, if you're gonna, you might as well put another school
So-
on those plans.
So no, I mean, it's a fair point that you're raising. We heard it. We hired someone to look at every single multifamily building in Quincy and said how many kids are going to school from those buildings. So Avalon, High Point, all the new buildings, and said, okay, based on those number of units that we have here, how many kids are expected to go to the school based on the other developments? That number is less than 20. I don't know the exact number, we'll have that this week, but that's based on
Less than
how many,
20%?
less than 20 kids.
I'm not sure those are the right things, because those are mostly young urban people, those aren't necessarily families. I mean, it's these houses here that are families.
You said less than
What
20%.
was your calculated
But it's the
population?
same,
I missed that.
it's the same,
800 to?
it's the same product type. It's the same product type.
prices
Between 800 and 1100.
That's like
It's too much, Chris.
unbelievable.
Chris,
Well, it's 1.75 people per dwelling unit, which is based
For
on,
3 bedrooms?
if you're asking a question and you want me to answer, I'll answer it.
Sure.
So that is based on calculations from other multifamily buildings and from the census data. It's not an MEP calculation that frankly was made up.
No, because I didn't use those numbers, and I said at the public hearing, I didn't use numbers putting 2 people in 1 unit, because I found that to be unrealistic. I had 1 person in a studio, 1 person in a 1-bedroom, 3 people in a 2-bedroom, and 4 people in a 3-bedroom. And I don't think that's, given the current population use of apartments in the area, I don't think that's unrealistic. To say 1.1 people are gonna live in a 3-bedroom apartment.
I'm not sure.
But you just said 1.1 per unit.
No, it's an average, 1.75. So, we're going to provide all the information. It's going to be on the website as we had. We published the Hospital Neighborhood Association position on our website, all the data. But to go back to the schools question, and that's an important one that was raised at the hearing that we went and addressed. We looked at every multifamily building and said how many are extrapolated out of that, and then went and talked to the superintendent and said, based on this information and your experience with other multifamily buildings, how much of an impact is this expected to have on burn design? And how many teachers, how much staff would need to be added to the school based on that? And so that is the calculation and the information that we're trying to get to this week and post on the website. I'm happy to share the information with you, email to you. But that is an important aspect that we understand. And as the development evolves and we try to figure out the unit types and whether it's independent living or market rate, if one of these buildings is then 55 plus, then that is expected to obviously lessen the impact on the schools.
A multifamily building being an apartment building, not 2, 3, and 4 family houses.
An apartment building, correct.
Okay, so that's a difference. That is a big difference.
Right.
this is
It's
the
based on the bedroom count per unit, not necessarily the building. So a 3-bedroom is afforded a different penalty than a 1-bedroom and a 2-bedroom.
So how many units in this building that's going up right here? Do we have that number?
Approximately 135.
Yeah.
How many?
135.
Which
135.
building was it, A, B, C, or D?
C.
This is C?
How about how many row houses and how many townhouses you have total?
The current submitted plan shows 17 townhouses and 36 row houses.
Okay, because I feel in my analysis that you'll get more kids in those 50 units than you will in the entire other 550. So if we're concerned about kids overcrowding the schools, one suggestion would be maybe forget all the row houses and townhouses, and another suggestion would maybe be for the density would be like, instead of having 3 buildings and 4 buildings, have only 3 buildings and increase the height by 1 more floor in all the buildings?
Yeah, so the first point, the townhouses and row houses increasing the impact on the schools, that's accurate, for sure. Like, I'm not hiding that fact. Like, when we send the analysis on the schools, it's when you have those units, it increases the school-age population. So we're happy to, once the information is here, happy to have a conversation and say, we thought one benefit of the townhouses and row houses, it created a different kind of character and vibe to the whole development. You don't see it at a lot of these other multifamily apartment buildings, but you know, those don't have to stay if the impact on the schools is outsized relative to what they are.
Well, are there going to be 3-bedroom apartments in the big buildings?
There gonna be what?
Do you have any 3-bedroom apartments in the high density buildings?
It's a very small number.
Yeah, it'll be a small percentage.
Okay, because I think the more 1-bedrooms, the better for the schools, and also the better for the cars, because there's from the research I've done, there's not many children living in 1-bedrooms, and there's not many cars in 1-bedrooms, and we don't, there's no space to park on the streets over there, and it's just, I really want to know what you guys really want, because the PUD basically gives you the right, by right, to do this, so I'm scared. I mean, once everyone at the Hospital Association said that you guys were for the PUD, I know how things work in the city, and they have the right. They have people come up all the time and say, we have the right to do this, we have the right to do this. Well, they actually have the right to do this. I felt the other night that it was almost like I didn't even get a chance to speak. You saw me coming in late. I forgot my cameras. It was a crazy night that night, but I almost felt like everyone sort of gave you the finger the other night. Like screw you, I hate your plan. And the last thing we want to do is make you guys angry, because you could come back next time and say, you know what, we got 800 units.
Well, that's not the direction that we're going. That's not what the intent was. The intent was the plan that we put out was, hey, here's obviously the Hospital Neighborhood Association disagreed, but we thought was consistent with the conversation we had last year when the PUD amendment was approved. And so we put together a plan that is, some people might not want to hear this, but is responsible for the site that we're looking at. But it is the start of a conversation to say, okay, there were some very good points raised at the meeting, and some things that need to be addressed. And so what our intention is to say, okay, what are those priorities, and can we work cooperatively together to try to come up with something that makes everyone feel like this is more responsible than the site.
So I feel like because people are taking notes, we've got recorders, we're getting this recorded, that I need to clarify some things. And with respect to that PUD amendment, the Hospital Hill Association, and again, everybody here is not from the association, so they don't all speak for the association, and neither do I, quite frankly. I speak as an individual at this point. But we were hit with that PUD between Thanksgiving and Christmas. It was a fait accompli. We were told, and the planning board was basically approving it. We had very little room to negotiate any items within that PUD. We did not negotiate that PUD. And we were taken by surprise. We were very clear with Chet about our disapproval and our concern about that PUD. So no one should suggest in any way that PUD amendment was negotiated or that we had, not with us.
But the president did stand up and said that he was in full support of every aspect of the PUD.
We're grateful that
He did
it
not.
came from
Not
8
every aspect.
floors down to
No,
6.
that's what he said though.
That's what we got,
That's
right?
what he
8 to
said.
6, and then what else did we get?
There was an increase in open space, and we wanted more than
open space.
We wanted way more than 20%. But I'm just saying. I mean, I was part of that whole process, and I was not involved at the very end. I had a death in the family. But I'm just saying. I wanted to be clear to everybody from the Hospital Hills Association perspective. We did not have an opportunity to negotiate in any way that PUD amendment. I mean, it would certainly be our preference not to have had the City Council approve it, not to have had that
Moved out of the City
happen at all.
Council?
Yeah, we wanted
the planning
an
department?
elected officials to have an opportunity to speak on
Okay,
this.
well, and that's fair enough, I think, but from our perspective, and maybe you can just put that on for a second, is it was negotiated. The Hospital Hill Neighborhood Association was not on board with it until there was a negotiation. We doubled the open space to 20%. We're now providing 61%. And then we took that as this is the direction of the site. It was taken from 8 stories to 6 and FAR from 4 to 2.5. And we said, hey, in order to continue to advance the conversation, there's about 3 years of planning that need to go in to show what a development that it sounded like everyone had that there was a consensus on it, that the Hospital Neighborhood Association publicly supported. And so that's what we've done. We took 10 months and we advanced a plan that was within the parameters of the amendment, and we submitted it, and that's what this conversation is about. To say, okay, you didn't like the first pass, all we could do was present something. To say, this has been the parameters, what about this don't you like? What about this can we work on? Is it the youth? Happy to visit the 55 plus. If there's a market for it, we do. And we've talked to several operators, and we've said, hey, would you operate an assisted living facility here, independent living? We're learning that market as we go. So that over time, as the buildings come out of the ground, and we do this, we could say, here, building C is a good footprint for senior independent living. Happy to share more of that conversation.
Yeah, I think maybe later on that.
We took townhomes, row houses, and said, hey, this is a product type that really doesn't exist in Quincy right now, and there are a lot of people that have moved to Quincy that like living here but can't afford to buy a house and are looking elsewhere. Do they want to move into a townhouse and a rental where they don't have a down payment? Now, so that's the positive. You're giving people an opportunity to stay in the city and become active citizens where they otherwise would move further down Route 3 or elsewhere. Now, the downside is it has a greater impact on the schools. There's no denying that. So the question is, as a neighborhood, and you guys live here, this is, we're trying to put forth a development plan that we think makes sense. Of those two kind of, objectives, which one is more important and which one can we kind of say is something the neighborhood wants to see? A townhome row house component where you have a different kind of product type not only makes the architecture a little bit distinct, but makes the entire project feel a little bit more like the neighborhood where there are kids and there are families. If that's not something the neighborhood wants, we can absolutely talk about that. But
well, I'm sure we can talk about that. Those are all really good points.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to collaborate with you guys. But I would like to comment one thing. In the community analysis we saw last week, it does say that if it was residential, then the development is supposed to match other residential properties in the vicinity. That would mean outside of the hospital property. We look around and we have residentials around it. How do you feel that this comes close to matching the other residential properties in the vicinity?
Keeping with the character of the neighborhood.
Yeah, it doesn't match what the PUD says, so I'm curious
I know
how
you
you
kept
feel.
the facade of the administration building. That was great. That was
Didn't
nice
go-
and all
didn't
that, but it
parapet.
exploded all around it in size.
Did you have that picture? I know you showed it in the meeting.
We don't have the rendering.
I think everyone's confused about what a PUD is. A PUD is a high density development. So when they
Well, it
change
just
it,
means planned urban development, and then from that point forward.
but
the city council
Avalon is a
supposed to decide what that
PUD. This
actually
is no more dense than Avalon
It is
or
way more dense.
Than
We had-
Avalon?
yeah, oh, absolutely. We had a diagram of that at the meeting. You may not have your facts straight. This is the highest density residential development by far in Quincy. And we have all the data on that, and we had diagrams. Way denser. Even than High Point.
Well, I'm just saying, if they don't allow this here, like on Warren Ave down in Wollaston, Mr. Boncaldo is building 40 or 44 units right in a residential neighborhood. So all around the city, on Spear Street, they want to build 60 units and stuff. So it's either build 500 or 600 units in places where they have 10 or 20 acres, or they're going to start sprouting everywhere. I kind of think one of the things you can negotiate with the city council is and say, make sure we get no more building in Res B. That's what's killing us.
But let's do the walk around. Let's do what you guys
All right,
had
so that's
in
my
mind,
beef.
so we can
I would
But,
move on.
I would say that
61% of the land area is green space.
open space.
Open space.
Now,
But
what
that
the
includes
reporter should
rooftops.
know is
Well,
that the
I'd be interested
Glendale
in seeing
Park.
if you could lay out where all the 61% is.
Includes
Because when I look at it, I don't see 61%.
This is a completely different geological elevation. That's down below.
That's the
You
park,
can't
yeah.
even see it from here, so.
The 61% doesn't include the green roof space, but it does include road surfaces. I believe we're at just
It includes all the road surfaces.
yes, as a non-building area, but over 50% is planted landscape, green space, and permeable, meaning water can permeate through the surface and not run off like the existing parking lot.
all this,
Yeah.
this little thing
So you're
here.
cutting the
all
road
this-
at
all this-
61%?
It's the buffer
That's
zone.
the legal definition.
And before it said it was green.
between green space and open space.
How much is green space?
But green space is still, I believe it's just north of 50%. I don't have the exact
Green
number.
space
Green
is
space.
north and open space is 61?
Yes.
Is concrete walkway considered green space?
No. It's open. It's part of the open space, but not green space.
And the pool
Water space.
I don't know about the exact footprint of the pool. I know this counts as open space. I don't remember if it's part of the green space or not.
Can people from Grunwall Road swim in the pool?
There's a slight insurance issue.
So, I mean, we can walk, it's a good point, but one thing to point out as we talk about design and the location of this building, and we've kind of heard it loud and clear at the planning board, one of the things that we did do from a design standpoint to achieve more green space was this kind of central green area in the middle, and then locating the row houses and townhomes in there and providing pedestrian access to Euclid was an opportunity to say, you know, this is a great spot to come walk for the neighborhood, a gathering place. Now, the trade-off there obviously is, you know, you're talking about some density here, and you know, we're achieving that 61% open space, or 50% green space, 61% open space required us to put the parking underneath, right? And so that's an expense. But we thought it was a great design principle to try to make this a neighborhood and have it accessible for everyone. If we start revisiting density along the perimeter and location of these buildings, we're absolutely open to do, if that's, you know, the general consensus, then some of that planning and some of that green space and some of the design features that we've tried to incorporate, you know, just don't have a place in that revised development.
They do, though. You concentrate the buildings here. Our neighborhoods are not going to come through here and sort of chit-chat and meet and all that. You're going to have 2,000, you say 1,100, some, you know, 1,100 to 2,000 people in here. They're not going to come through here. What they want is green space along in here. So concentrate your density in here, put your row houses all the way around, have some more open space, green space for the neighborhood. This is all great for the people who live here, but I think the point of the people in Glendale is that doesn't do anything for them.
Well, that's my point. That's what I said. If you want, if that is what people are looking for, we're open to it. It's just going to take away from some of the other areas.
I mean, it's hard to appreciate the beauty and the elegance of what you've put forth because the scale of it is so overwhelming, right? It's kind of like it's hard to see. I mean, when you show the pictures and talk about all the great features and using historical characteristics and stuff, it's like, wow, that's all great stuff. And it would be wonderful to be able to appreciate each of those elements, and it's great. But because the whole effort is so overpowering to what folks think is consistent with the neighborhood, it's hard to see that.
Oh, totally get it.
Yeah,
and
keep in mind, this neighborhood does not consider Avalon nor High Point to be part of it. Those are considered to be blemishes on this city. All right, they were promises of how those buildings were going to look that were unfulfilled by the developers. They're far ugly. And if you drive anywhere into the city and you look up at the hill, you see those concrete tops and you say, man, there's High Point. What a mistake that was. That was so ugly. That was such a badly done job. And so, but those are not considered part of this community. I mean, it's unfortunate how they impact Cranch so much.
Our whole neighborhood association, border to border, encompasses 900 families. So you want 800 people here when there's only 900 of us on the whole Hospital Hill, section. So it's too dense.
What's your name?
Kyle Beltran.
On those 4 buildings, you have the one that's like your least favorite building. You know, like let's say if you were going to just remove one of the 4 buildings, would the other 3 stay in the same places, you think?
There's 5 points.
Because the way you've engineered everything and figured everything out.
I don't know that you can just remove a building, and I don't have a least favorite.
Well, the way I look at it, in layman's point, it's like you got 4 decos up here, and it's like obviously if 3 decos is better than 4 decos, 2 decos is better than 3 decos, and 1 deco is better than 2 decos. So it's like, how many decos do you want to put up here? And when you do the square footage of the lot, it's kind of weird. Everyone was so worried about the park.
Yep.
And that's what they negotiated about. So they saved the park and stuff. And I knew I actually expected you guys to be more dense than this, so I'm not shocked at all. And I'm just surprised at how shocked they were the other night at that meeting. Well, you know what I'm saying? Because it's like, this is Quincy. Quincy has changed, and it's all about high density stuff. And to make matters even worse, the retirement pension fund has lost this year. So we actually need your tax revenue.
So do you want to have if you don't mind, maybe just the height we could talk about here, since we are standing right here. So we just took when we decided to keep this, and you can obviously, you don't need to walk in the building to know the condition of it. It made a lot of the decisions for us in terms of centralizing the amenities, kind of where we located buildings, but also the height of the cupola was something that we said we just weren't going to go above in this initial plan, and that is what you're seeing here. And obviously the existing hospital is a little bit taller, so that is just our initial out of the gate proposal on height, but obviously open to the conversation, and Josh or Kyle can get into a little bit more about how we tried to use the site and the severe slope that you mentioned earlier to try to mitigate the overall height and impact on the neighborhood.
So the 6-story building on Whitwell will not go higher than that cupola?
Yes. So you got the cupola. You got the cupola. You got the cupola here. And then you got, this is the existing hospital, and these are the proposed buildings here. What's that?
I was just saying we could talk about it together later on.
You mean that existing building, the nurses?
The nurses' building isn't.
Right here?
This one. That's the
That's the old one?
That's part of the mechanical.
That's the picture from last year.
Okay.
I've got that picture from the. And it's a very impressive looking complex from this particular point of view.
What's the usage of this building?
Well, amenities. We had a wrapper for kind of a gym. We had hoped like a new construction, kind of a new building, just a new facade as like an entrance to wrap around this building.
On the backside?
Just a one-story piece that was just on this side, and then the back of the back of the admin building.
So it was also in the front?
No,
yeah,
just
setback.
Yeah, on the other side.
Does this
going around
remain
the back.
resident? Is this residential? You guys?
No.
Only amenity use. We looked at residential, trying to fit residential in the existing footprint, and the depth of the admin building isn't really conducive to apartments.
But they're keeping that.
But we're
that
keeping the
facade
building.
is staying to keep with the character of the neighborhood, right?
Yep.
And the use would be a gym, and I think you had amenities for the gym, like a juice bar.
Yeah, so
kind of thing.
it was part of the small retail was thought of on a kind of plaza that stepped out on the side of this admin building, and then a gym that would be used by the residents would be on the back side of this building as part of that new one-story kind of extension.
I thought in the building you also had like amenities for the people using the gym.
We have a leasing office. We're trying to just make it back a house. I mean, there's no feasible reuse of the building. It's kind of sunk costs since we put it in there, but to keep it. So we're trying to tamp down the programming.
And the amenities were in the second story too.
Like business center type amenities.
But I wonder what are amenities represent?
Like a business center, so for residents to go and take their laptop, and if they're working from home, they have a space to work.
But open only to the residents of the complex?
Yes.
Wouldn't it be rented out?
No.
How about if you build a place, will there be a place that we can maybe have public meetings for neighborhood meetings in the future? Could you open up to that or something? So there's like a meeting room. I know when they built the Roach Brothers promised they'd put in a public meeting room for the neighbors to have a meeting, because as you know, like, where do we have a meeting? I mean, it's kind of...
They're pretty good about giving us space.
Well, I have a suggestion here. I'd like to go upstairs in the neighborhood
and have a meeting with you guys instead of when people are bowling downstairs and we're hearing background noise or something, and having a real good presentation about, you know, what's going on, or going to Central again. I mean, because even the other night, where did you guys all park when you come up? Or did everybody walk to the meeting?
But it's irrelevant to this discussion.
Yeah.
It really is. We're talking about
Yeah.
residential. We're
Yeah.
talking about we're having a meeting on negotiating that kind of stuff.
Well, I just think it's
don't think
strange
the
having a
neighbors are really
meeting
interested
and,
in that.
and it's hard even hearing, and this
stick
is
to the-
important stuff. And even like for just
Correct.
coming here this
Correct.
morning,
That's
it
what
was
we want.
printed 114, and we're just
Done.
kind of walking around trying to find out what's going
We're so
on.
neighborly, we have meetings in each other's houses.
Yeah, we do that.
So that's kind of, and then obviously the height of the, you know, the existing hospital, you know, we, as part of this plan, you know, that would come down, and so nothing on that side of the site is going to be that height.
Do you have the rendering of the front, like the whole?
Here,
Like
I got the
this
picture here.
and-
This is
We have an aerial. It's available on our website.
That's it there from the meeting.
So what's been the feedback? I mean, not just us, 598
that.
units,
I get to
rentals.
go.
I
There we go.
mean, any,
That's-
are you gonna move on that?
That picture
Come
from the meeting
down?
the other night.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking
You
to,
can
we have
see it's-
we have a
it's
meeting
quite-
with the Hospital Neighbor
It's been knocked-
Association, a
if you look
few
here, you
folks,
can see
Will
the
and Ted,
height of the couple, you can see
Monday.
the height of the building.
We're here to,
They're pretty much just
you know,
below
say
that.
if
But they are come up closer
you know,
to
a
the
desire
edge of
for
the building.
townhomes
So
or
that
houses,
kind of looks like a
then,
very,
you know, we can revisit that.
I think someone
But
described
it's,
this
you know,
fortress
you know,
from that
we're
street,
expecting this to be
and
one or
I
two
think
meetings.
that's kinda-
We're expecting it to
that's
kind of
kinda
be
accurate,
a
yeah.
process, and
I think I'll go Monday. Are you going Monday? All right.
I mean, the building you have over there, is that building A?
Yes.
Could that be moved? That seems like that's very close to the Colonial Drive, and you know, I know you own that house next door over here,
Yeah.
so you're sort of abutting on yourself.
yeah, why don't we kind of cap it off and go over there and look at the setbacks along
But
Colonial?
setbacks is always something that's helpful.
Why don't we do that?
As stated, 2021.
Yeah, I'm out of school. I'm 30. Long done.
That's super old at the ledger.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, all of our reporters are 29 or 30 or 31, except for Mary's 25. And then Fred's like 55.
Does Patrick ever call back or come visit? Patrick Ronan?
He emails occasionally. I don't really know him though. I didn't overlap with him at all.
He was cool. I liked him.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I felt like, oh.
He's at Father Bill's now, right?
Yeah. That crushed me too once he went there, because that show, like, oh, I kind of felt good for him because he didn't have to write the bullshit anymore,
Yeah.
you know? And he was a good guy, you know?
Yeah, hell yeah.
Sean didn't seem to mind at all, you know what I'm saying? Like, he seemed to, like, really like it and buy into it. But I think, you know, you're pretty smart.
Thank you.
Because I mean, I've talked to all your editors and stuff, everybody and stuff. They all hate me. And, you know, they're like, won't even talk to me or whatever, you know, anymore. And, you know, like your stories obviously have some negativity to them, which I like.
Well, yeah.
You know what I'm
you gotta
saying? So
report
it's
both
like,
sides, you know?
no, it's, I really can't tell what the hell you're trying to do. You know what I'm saying? So that's what you're supposed to do.
Put the facts out.
Exactly.
No agenda for me.
So this red line is the 25-foot setback. So by the time we get to the edge of Colonial, we're at 57 feet. And so we quickly kind of bend back away from this house, 43 feet here. And one other point of confusion I'd like to clarify is I know there was some concern about roof decks and views down into neighbors. So wherever we show the large roof deck, we have an 8-foot planted buffer from the edge. So no one can stand at the railing and look down at the neighbor. Their view lines are out.
Say that again. I don't understand how if you're up on the top of the building, you're looking down, you can't see the building.
So from the railing or from the parapet edge,
Yeah.
there's 8 feet of planted buffer to that edge. So you can't
on the top of the building.
On the top of the building.
And
So
that's
if,
what you see here.
yeah, so that's what that green piece is indicating that
So
the
no one's
And
allowed
you think
there.
the line of
Yeah.
sight you cannot.
so the occupiable roof deck space is that kind of gray space.
And then if you draw a line of sight, when can you see into the neighborhood?
So you might be able to see tops of roofs, and we can provide a diagram as to what that looks like. But you're not going to be able to look straight down into your neighbor having a barbecue.
There's only select locations.
What about up here?
That's not accessible.
No roof,
So
you mean?
we had set back the building at that top another 5 feet so that you can't stare down.
But people are in that top.
There are
those
windows.
top units.
There's windows, obviously.
Yeah. And
I
so
think
the same
Carolyn,
thing.
is it? And that might be.
Yeah,
Ernie.
see, the residents would be here if they could, but Ernie lives there and
Have you gone to their
Caroline
house?
lives there.
I know Ernie is
And so we have that same kind of
Yeah.
buffer
And
edge
Caroline
here,
would be more than
and that
happy.
same buffer edge here.
Where's
That's
the far
Jocelyn
edge of the
pointed
building? Where's the end of the building, like
Yeah, if
here
you wanna-
physically? Do you
Look
have a-
at
do you have a physical point though on this driveway here? Where would the end of it
Yeah.
would be here? I don't know where 25 feet.
So there's the little shed. It's right there that you can see right there, and that's kind of in line of where the building starts to fade back away from the.
We're probably standing on it. You're probably right. This is
Yeah.
probably the edge of the building, right? Something like that.
then-
Not even well.
And then quickly angle
Maybe even closer. Maybe it's here. It's right here. Over here somewhere.
Okay, now that Ernie
Depends on where that fence is.
Trying to get a visual.
I'm not sure the fence is.
bought that property.
Hey, what's up, man?
Oh no, you're not up today.
Remember, she pulled out the tapes at the meeting, and there was a lot of.
Well, so a parking space is usually about 18 feet, and that's probably
So it's probably in here somewhere.
yeah.
Probably in here somewhere.
The edge of the building.
And then at this location it's 5 stories, and then kicks back at an angle because we have a little bit denser landscape buffer here than we do on that house.
The building kind of goes sideways once you get down there.
Yeah, so
down
by the time we get to the fence that's along Colonial, we're I can't remember the exact number that we had. I believe it was over 50 feet.
Well, there's really only that one abutter, Mr. Tapper there, that has the big yard there, but that's why it's weird, because like if they're cool with it, if the direct, don't you feel kind of like almost like the direct abutters over here, obviously it's you, and behind you, like they're not going to give you a problem, am I right?
No, they're not.
And we
I don't think that they're very happy with the butters here, with the setbacks.
I believe he spoke.
Yeah, I think so.
And the angle back of the building kind of picks up the angle of his house, so that you don't have windows that are directly parallel to his side windows. They're more at an oblique angle, and they're looking past each other rather than directly into each other.
I mean, if you were going to do townhouses, wouldn't a row of townhouses right here kind of make sense?
I think the other piece that was mentioned in the meeting is a very dense planted buffer.
But wouldn't the row houses act as, like, what if they let you do the row houses, but let you go to say maybe 10 feet? So you wouldn't have to use 25 feet if they allowed you to go to 10 feet. So therefore, the people wouldn't have to look at the big buildings in their backyard. Could that maybe be a workaround?
I'm sorry, what?
I'm saying to the fact of like I think you got the row houses over there, not to impact those houses that are on that side street. But I don't think what everyone fails to mention is we're all Res B, so this is all designed which is multifamily dwellings.
Yeah.
No, it's a good point we brought up. I think on the next meeting,
A lot of these, she's always been
about here, Josh, scales back.
It's just what it is. But at the end of the day,
has a difficult.
BC has tough, but yeah, he's in a good academic institution.
Figure out what's going
Belcher, CHER. Yep.
And what's your title?
I'm an architect with UTL.
Okay.
I want to know when they're going to appoint.
None of your traffic studies were done by Jack Ellum? None of your traffic studies were done by Jack Ellum?
No.
Right? That is a good thing. Like, you guys are using like all real engineering firms. You know, like, you should get up and you should say that, you know, like, you should actually say that this is a traffic study not from Jack Ellum. This is not being done by Woodin and Curran. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Although you still might get stuck using Woodin and Curran for something. It's very tough.
I think we probably have a conflict.
Considering because of how close the Shays live.
No, because of their involvement with the city. It would just be a bad business practice to use Woodin and Curran.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You guys are technically like the best that we can get.
We try.
You know what I'm saying? So that's why I think it's like, you know, as bad as it is, Quincy has just changed. You know, and there's no going back. Quincy has become a high density place, and it's almost like, you know, how dense. I almost think it's to get as dense in the middle and as less on the outsides, but the townhouses will. Like, if you had all townhouses in here, like 150 townhouses, that would be more kids than 600 high density. Okay, and that would overburden Bernardini, you know, and Bernardini is the place that, like, everybody wants to go to too. Although going to the school committee meetings, it's not one of the best schools anymore. No. You know, now one of the best schools is Wollaston.
Yep.
Montclair's doing a good job.
Yep.
You know, so and Central. I'm not sure where you would go to school. Would you go to Central if you lived here?
Central Middle?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. You know, Central's clearly the best middle. Our middle schools are weird. Like, they had the middle school teachers last night giving presentations, and you know, Sterling, only like 25% of the kids are passing.
Oh, really?
And you got, you know, Atlantic, where you got like 80% of the kids passing.
No kidding.
You know, we got a weird city though. You know, when the superintendent has the same name as one of the principals, it makes it interesting. He asked no questions of that, so. But I just seem to think that sometimes you guys ask for more just to make it like shock and awe, like McKinnon did behind the Quincy Center. Like, and even the Boners said the same thing. Like, he's the one that threw me off, because they went from 600, but they really only wanted 300, so they came in at 6. So do you guys really only want 3, or do you really want 6? I just want to know the truth. Because, you know what I'm saying?
Put forward a faithful design of what we're actually trying to do, as opposed to horse trading competition.
Right, so you're pretty, so if we don't get 600,
if we wanted,
it might be like 550. But we're
we
going
would have submitted 800 if we wanted to go through that type of exercise. We're trying to be faithful to the neighborhood and respectful of the
Well, that's what I was thinking, because I almost thought that when I saw this plan, like, this is the plan. And, you know, as much as everybody wants to complain, this is going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking forward to
and it's all about how do we make it as nice as possible. Let's plant the right trees. Let's, you know, make the green space nicer, you know what I'm saying? Let's get some amenities that the neighbors can enjoy and stuff and whatever. I mean, I live right down at the bottom of the street, so what I would like is we need a stop sign at the bottom of you know, the bottom of Hospital Hill, because you guys are going to get a lot of people now that are going to be wanting to go out and taking a left and taking a right. I don't miss the hospital. You know, I don't miss that ambulance going by me all the time making noise and stuff, because I'm the very first house down there on the right. And you know, I look at it as a tax benefit. The very first thing I asked these guys is that you guys aren't asking for a tax break here. He said they weren't. You know, I think they're gonna ask for all the tax breaks on the other property down there. But they promised they weren't gonna do any here. And so I said, if you weren't gonna do that here, I would support this, because we really do need that new growth. But we need new growth without the kids. So so one of the things you could help is is changing some of those 2 bedrooms and 3 bedrooms to more 1 bedrooms.
No, and that's it's a balance between do we and does the neighborhood want a community that is family friendly on the site, or is that going to impact the schools too much?
So it's a little bit higher because you have to
smaller unit sizes.
you have to account for kind of the depth of those.
So it's a conversation that we have that we're going to discuss.
Exactly.
Can I interrupt for a quick second? Can I
Yep.
just get your first and last name?
Yeah, my name's John.
John.
Yeah.
And your last name?
It's on Rodophill, ROD.
ROD.
OPH. ELE.
And you said you live just down the road here in Quincy, right? So
Yeah,
you're, like,
I
part of the
live right
neighborhood?
across the street. Yeah.
Okay, so what street was it on?
I live on Grunwall Road.
Grenwall? Or I don't know if the street is the same.
GRENWOLD. Yeah, Whitwell changes to Grunwall right as soon as you go across Adams Street.
Okay. In Quincy. And are you videotaping for yourself, or are you with somebody?
I
or?
own the domain name Quincy.com. I've lived in Quincy my entire life.
Okay.
I've tried competing and doing news things and doing whatever, but since the last 3 years, I go and I videotape for some reason when they redid City Hall, they moved everything around and they stopped recording the zoning, the planning, conservation, license board, like the Quincy Cable Access used to record this stuff. They stopped recording it.
Oh.
And
Do they still have a Quincy Public Access program?
they still have Quincy Public
And they just
Access,
stopped
okay.
doing it.
So
Okay.
Quincy, their only
Yeah.
title is they do city council meetings
Yeah.
and they do school committee meetings. Well, they don't do all subcommittee meetings.
Yeah.
So like last night, so I've kept adding to it. So now I'm up to the point I do zoning, I do planning, I do conservation, I do
Yeah.
school committee, I do city council. And I try to do as many, I call this like a neighborhood meeting.
Right,
As many of these neighborhood meetings that I can, and I have a YouTube channel called
Nice.
Quincy Taxpayers.
Okay,
So,
okay.
now unfortunately, like I was telling Erin, since I've been doing this for 4 years now, there's been like 4 different Quincy reporters for the Ledger. They kind of stay in for a year and then they move on or they do whatever.
Yeah.
I'm still here and it's about,
Yeah. What was your YouTube channel again?
I call it the Quincy Taxpayers.
Okay.
So, so I have stuff. When Mayor Phelan ran against Mayor Koch,
Yeah. Well, it's great to have like somebody collecting the media like that. I mean, the public channels should be doing it. You should be working for them.
well, what's so sad is that
'Cause
they
it's important.
Quincy Cable Access considers me competition, and like the Ledger considers me competition. They don't want to collaborate or do anything. Like I asked Quincy Cable, like let me show my meetings on cable,
Yeah, they should be there.
and they give me problems about becoming like a member.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Becoming a member.
I ran for city council for Ward 5,
Yeah.
and that Hustle Association didn't even have a debate for me. I was the only candidate that wasn't offered a debate from anyone. And then there was a debate that they had after the primary because 3 people ran, and I ended up coming in 3rd, so I didn't survive.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But I then didn't even know about it. So I personally, I'm not sure who represents who.
Yeah,
Everyone is almost like protect, until something comes right next door to their house,
Yeah.
they don't care.
Yeah.
So I'm the guy that speaks up no matter whose house it is. I just happen to actually live near
To
this
be
one.
right here.
But that's my dad's house. I technically am only there part-time, but that will be my house.
Yeah,
And the only
eventually,
way you can almost afford to buy a house in Quincy
Oh, is to have
is to inherit one.
Yeah, I know.
It's just crazy. Where are you from yourself?
I live in Hull. I used to live here in Quincy, but
No,
I live
who are
in
you
Hull.
working with?
I'm with the Patriot Ledger.
Oh, you're with the Ledger too. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
I'm just
ask any.
I'm a freelance photographer. So
Ask
they just,
any of your,
I just freelance with them.
like Lisa's one of your editors, or
Yeah.
all your top people. They've all talked to me. Ask
Yeah.
them about me, and they'll tell you
Yeah.
how crazy I am. Yeah. Like I promised, I think everyone that I won't call them anymore. You know what I'm saying? Or they said, they won't listen because basically, like I would call up and I'd say that article that Sean did, or how come Sean wasn't at the zoning meeting the other night? You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's just interesting and stuff. And
Well, it's hard for the newspapers because they can't. It's such little staff. I mean, even the photographers. There's like one staff photographer. And the rest are freelance. So it's same with the reporters.
I've learned that certain people can do whatever they want in Quincy. And so I've learned there's certain people, there's no use standing against them because you know the pressure. Like Fox Rocks is going to develop this site, you know, and it's about like, well, like let's do it the best so it doesn't harm the city the least, but it's still going to be horrible. You know what I'm saying?
Refurbish some of the spaces because it's a really nice, beautiful building. Sedentary. That's a whole other thing.
Well, I mean, like I was saying, I look at it as like there's going to be 4 decos here. Each one of those is like a deco. I hate looking at deco. You know, I mean, it's going to be expensive. There's going to be apartments up here that they're going to want $2,000 for a studio. And these new apartments too. I'm not sure if you're aware of it, but you got to pay for your own water.
Oh yeah.
In these new things, like water isn't somehow is sub-water metered, and water's expensive. Water's like another $100. So you figure if you're going to pay $2,000 for a studio, that should include everything.
I need to get this. Yeah, on the scale of this, you said hey, was that stop you?
No problem. What's up, attorney?
So, you just walking around with that?
I don't know what I'm trying to do. It's a cluster here. Just said that everyone's showing up, no one knowing where to go.
Nobody knew. All I can tell you right now is we were
They're both from the Ledger.
They're both from the Ledger.
Yeah.
We were
Tony and Lucas.
The Ledger's got some resources, you know. I got a flashlight. That's about it for my company.
They were the resources they used to. That's
No, but they're still they have a niche though. Like you're gonna see all the papers die, and the Ledger will be one of the last ones standing because they got the Quincy people behind them. That one's got to promote it. They've like quadrupled the price, and they've lost 75% of the people, so they're still making the money off the thing. It's almost like an organization. So everyone who's a member of the Ledger, I feel, sort of supports theLedger. You know?
Thank you so much. It was nice to meet you.
Finally got my dad to quit.
See you next time.
Yeah. Bye bye.
was we're trying to focus on this site.
Now, what do you think, Attorney Hines? Like this is
now it's true. This is the other spot. Now it's true. It's adversarial now. It's pretty good.
Is this the plan?
They're gonna change.
What are you telling me?
They're gonna move some things around. I think the setback.
You know what the weird thing is? To be, I don't like how like the Hospital Hill Association, like that other night when I came back, I didn't even get a chance to speak. I'm still upset about that. Okay, but the you know, the whole Hospital Hill, it seems like that meeting the other night was just for their association. You know, and then I was upset that like the council saw one first too. Like they boycott. Like that was a public hearing for regular schmucks.
Sheriff. How are you? Come over here and say hi. I gotta. How you doing? They already got you in the. They already took out your tooth.
No, I know. I
focused on how to advance that ball down to
this this morning.
It's not.
Well, you should bring because it's just gonna scare.
If it was, we already be under construction. There's demonstrated.
Well, there's already a lot of residential being built.
How's it going?
Good. Which is great. It enables the users that potentially could come down there, say hey, nurses can live down there, doctors that can live down there. Where the residential down there is great. And people are advancing that. We're not focused on that downtown at all.
And it's not need for the community for housing or need for the city for the housing.
Right, we got
It's
plenty.
need for the general urban area around Boston for housing. That's what these things are being built for. There are not people from Quincy lining up at City Hall saying, you know, we need a place to live, we need a place to live, build us places to live. So that's part of the thing too. You're going to load this thing filled with renters from other locations, no connection to the community. And they're all going to be, you know, relatively short-term rentals. And I know that's true with any development, but you know, that's one of the concerns.
Well, we have affordable housing. Like I would like, you know, if you make them like I couldn't afford $2,000 for a studio, okay. But I mean, I would love to live in Quincy in my own apartment. You know what I'm saying? Yep. So I mean, is there some legal way to offer, you know, lower rent stuff to Quincy people. So you are moving like 100 Quincy people here. Maybe there's 100 people that sell their houses, and you sell like a condo. One of my ideas was like, you know, if market rate on condos were like $300,000, say $500,000, sell them to $300,000 to people who live in Quincy, who sell their houses. They move up here, they're able to buy something, because that's one of the things all the old people are thinking right now. I'd like to sell my house, but I don't know where to move to. And that way you would still be keeping it Quincy, because Jocelyn's right. Without doing that, we're going to have all people who aren't from Quincy over here. In all reality, those 600 people, their voice could become more powerful than the people that live over there, and they might be making the rules. You know, so I'm not sure how affordable housing works, but I mean, I know if you make condos and you're selling them, you can sell them for any price you want. You know, you don't have to put them on the MLS. You can just sell them all privately, and it's up to you who you want to sell them to. Am I wrong?
Well, we're not looking at doing condos here, but the affordability piece of it, just to the minimum thresholds, 10% of the units need to be affordable.
But even affordable, I don't think is affordable. Does that make any sense? I mean, the affordable one-bedroom rent in Quincy right now is like $1,900. You know, so a three-bedroom I think is $2,400. You know, so I mean, affordable would be like $1,200 for a one-bedroom. So even below affordable.
You should read the article Aaron wrote in the Ledger last week, and then next week we should have a follow-up conversation about it.
Okay.
There's some good stuff in there.
Okay.
That's why people who are still living in their parents' bedroom, basement, save up their money and try to buy something.
Well, I don't know, because that's pretty much how I still vote in Quincy, from that address in my basement. Otherwise, you know, I would have no right to even vote here.
Okay, well, so they kind of did a workforce housing, dedicated workforce housing development. That's one of the options we're looking at downtown. What about here? Now here, we would take the 10% affordable units that we're required to build, and not pay into the fund, not build them on site, but potentially build them off site downtown as part of a larger workforce housing development.
So you guys are
you working
60
housing
units
development
that you're
downtown?
putting down there.
Yeah.
In workforce development.
Yeah.
So, but you are involved in housing development downtown as well?
A workforce housing development downtown, whether it's through us or somebody else, I think is something that has obviously an identified need by a lot of the cities. Again, what I would suggest is if you could read Aaron's article in the Patriot Ledger that she wrote last week about affordable housing and workforce housing. There's a lot of good stuff in there, and we can have a conversation offline
But they're
about
apartment
that.
spaces, right?
Yeah.
All right. So
I think there's a lot of really there's a lot of really good information in there that's informed by facts that I think you would benefit greatly from, just looking at and seeing what's the different housing typology, what are the different price points.
Well, I know because
we could have an informed conversation about it.
I've actually rented a number of houses and units in the city, so
Okay.
I'm very familiar with the real estate market.
Okay.
I just never heard the word workforce, and it seems like a nomiker.
Yeah, it's kind of a jargon term
Yeah.
in the area.
A
But what it means
for a
is
studio.
it can vacillate. There can be different degrees.
I'll go read it. I won't waste your time with it.
It's really a way, the way, I mean,
it's basically-
me
it's based on
myself
the
too, I
average
mean, you're
median
talking to me
income, so
like,
they're like going
I don't know
to
what I'm talking
No,
about.
I know you.
Okay, you know what I'm saying? And, you know,
Oh, I see.
like the East Howard Street project is workforce housing, okay? And when you do workforce housing, there's 1% that gets it, or, you know, like 25% of the units or 20% get it really cheap.
Yep.
And those are the ones where there was a lot of it, okay? The second tier,
So it's low income.
there wasn't enough people that even wanted it.